Good evening and welcome to the January 9th meeting of the Livermore City Council. I now call the meeting to order. I'll ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Okay. Councilmember Carling. Here. Councilmember Coomer. Here. Councilmember Warner. Here. Vice Mayor Spadovsky.
Here.
Mayor Marchand.
Here.
All present.
Great, thank you. I ask that you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And with that, we have the annual update from the Library Board of Trustees. We have Richard Hunt. Mr. Hunt, welcome.
Need glasses for this.
Your arms just get shorter after a while.
Exactly. Good evening. So this is the annual report for 2016 of the Library Board of Trustees. The Library Board of Trustees consists of 5 board members. The terms of office are 3 years. Some of the board is here, so I'll ask them to stand so you can see who's who when I read their names. The current board membership is Matthew Berry, Jennifer Estridge, Richard Hunt, Art Pontau, and David Strubing. The board recognizes the dedication of former board members Maureen Gandara Swinbank and David Runyon, who termed out in June after 9 years of service on the Board of Trustees. New board members Jennifer Estridge and David Strubing were sworn in at the July 25th council meeting. The board supports the library mission, which is the Livermore Public Library encourages the development of lifelong interest in reading and learning by youth and adults, provides materials and services of popular interest, supports the educational needs of the community, furnishes timely, accurate information, and builds cultural awareness and enrichment. The Board of Trustees supports those activities. So the 2016 highlights are living vicariously through the accomplishments of the library staff. The library board had a very good year. The board offered support and counsel to the library in addressing its strategic service initiatives. Concerning the objective to increase outreach to a wider range of Livermore residents, the library started the Summer Teen Academy, which was a combination Citizens Academy and internship opportunity. Participating teens learned about the city while also learning life and work skills. The academy was allotted equally by the teen participants and the city staff who were their mentors. The library reached out to the local immigrant population by hosting an English as Second Language open house with Las Positas College, by adding a second weekly English conversation group, by updating the ESL collection available for checkout, and by creating a handout identifying ESL resources available locally. The library reached out to the small business community by hosting a workshop series for getting businesses online, by holding an open house at Livermore's iGate Innovation Hub, which is now called The Switch, and by creating and distributing a brochure highlighting the library's business resources. Regarding the objective to update the collection of books and other materials available in the library, over 12,000 new print books were added this year, a 3% increase over the previous year. The staff continued to make improvements in Livermore's own ebook platform, resulting in a 24% increase in ebook circulation. The library used grant funds to purchase additional books for teens. These books were selected with input from the library's Teen Advisory Board. The library expanded its Library of Things, which consists of a variety of educational items available for checkout. In addition to the programmable robots, which we mentioned last year in our report, the library has added telescopes, microscopes, educational toys, games, and more. 53 new items were added, and all were checked out within 2 days. In support of the objective to improve programs and services to the Rincon and Springtown neighborhoods, during the past fiscal year, the library offered 106 children programs at the Springtown branch library. Programs included story times, science programs, craft programs, and more. Over 3,300 residents attended these programs, an 8% increase over the previous year. Also during the past fiscal year, the library offered 213 children's programs at the Rincon branch. Programs included cultural programs, craft programs, story times, family bingo nights, and more. Over 7,600 residents attended these programs, a 56% increase over the previous year. Library staff is working with the California State Library and the Khalifa Library Consortium on a project to install broadband data access to the branches through the CalREN network. CalREN is a high-capacity fiber optic network operated by CENIC, the Corporation for Education Network Initiatives in California, a nonprofit California corporation. In 2015-16, the board applied for and received grant funding to purchase equipment for the network installation. Livermore City Council also approved additional funding needed to install the network. The project will increase bandwidth at the branches from 2 megabits per second to 100 megabits per second. This project is progressing well, and full implementation will be completed in 2016-17 fiscal year. The board thanks the council for supporting this initiative. The slow network speed currently experienced in the branch libraries limits patrons' ability to use many of the library's digital resources, so the greater bandwidth is a welcome improvement. The increased bandwidth also allows the library to service populations in entirely new ways. For example, two-way interactive remote learning. The board notes the release of the library's 2016 survey results by the Pew Research Center. This survey highlights several factors of interest to the future of the library. Fully 80% of the survey respondents say that libraries should offer programs that teach digital skills. And 50% look to libraries to provide 3D printers and other digital tools. This increasing demand for digital services is counterbalanced by the continuing strong demand for traditional library services. For example, borrowing books is still the most frequently done activities in libraries by a very large margin. In times of budget limitations, the library has a delicate balancing act of bringing in the new digital services while maintaining print collections at a level suitable to the continuing demand. The board acknowledges the continuing strong support of the Friends of the Livermore Library. In the past year, this independent nonprofit organization has funded many of the library's most important programs, including the Summer Reading Program, Livermore Reads Together, the Authors and Arts Program Series, the Lucky Day Collection, and educational programs for children throughout the year. Friends' contributions have amounted to $55,000 in the past year. Without this donation, the library would be unable to fund many of its most important programs. The library's 2016 survey results support the increasing demands for programs in libraries, tabulating a 58% increase in the demand for programs from 2015 to 2016. Recognizing that programs are a growing part of library services, the board wants to emphasize that ongoing stable funding for programs is of vital importance to the library. That Library 2016 survey also indicates a high user demand for the library as a place, a safe place to meet, to learn, to read, to work, or simply to relax. The board sees the library as the heart of the community and is encouraged by staff's effort to make the library welcoming to all. To further this effort, the library board has worked with the library on the following policy updates: the unattended children policy and the meeting room policy. That concludes our report. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Councilmember Warner?
Not really too much of a question. I think that's an impressive amount of stuff you've done. Is that posted online so we can get to it on our website, through the city website?
We can post the report, yes.
I think it would be worth it. And to the extent that the other committees come before us and do this, it'd be a good idea. But thank you. That was very, very impressive.
Okay. Questions?
I just wanted to compliment you on the services you provide, as well as I tend to want to try and write things at home sometimes and have 3 large snoring dogs around me trying to make things difficult, and head up to the library where it can be quiet and I can focus and get things done. And I really appreciate the space. I really appreciate the staff's help when I've needed things, looking in places that I had no idea existed. I appreciate everything the library does for us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you to you and to the board as well for taking the time. Did you say $55,000 from the Friends of the Livermore Library?
$55,000 from the Friends of the Library.
That is fantastic, and I've always had a deep affection for the libraries because my first job was at the Hayward Library, and that put me through college, and that was also at Carnegie Library. So spent many years working in libraries and sharing the collection. So great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to Citizens Forum. These are for items that are not on the agenda. The City Council can neither deliberate nor take action on items brought up during the Citizens Forum, although they may be considered at a later time. And I would ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. With that, we've got about a dozen cards. With Peter Polson, Connie Copps, and Dave McGuigan. Mr. Polson.
Mayor Marchand, City Council. My name is Peter Poulsen. I reside at 9325 Lupin Way. It's about 1/2 mile from the oil extraction wells on Patterson Pass Road, which is just east of the laboratory. The E&B Oil Company, which is the company doing the extraction, is asking for an exemption from the state to inject water into the ground. It's also asking to increase the area that is being exempted. Right now they extract a mixture of oil and water, about 20% oil, 80% water. The oil is then separated. The water is pumped back in, and that water is a mixture of old ocean salt water. It's not drinking water, also have oil and other contaminants in it. So what are the considerations? One is drinking water contamination for area wells, including the ones in Livermore, induced earthquakes, and also what is fair. If the permit is not approved, the operation will have to shut down, and if it is improved, then there may be water problems and earthquake issues. Earthquakes are the most important issue. It affects the containment of the water that's being disposed of. Of course, then you have the damage due to the earthquakes. And the fact is that there are 3 faults. The whole area is bounded by 3 faults, including the Greenville fault. And so I looked up some facts from the United States Geological Society. And this has been a big issue since about 2009, when all the earthquakes started in Oklahoma. Water injection causes earthquakes if injected water is near a fault. And we're not talking about fracking here, we're just talking about water going back into the ground. More water gives more quakes, has been found in Oklahoma, Kansas, Ohio, Texas, other places. In Oklahoma, the number of earthquakes went from 2 per year to about 900 per year, at a magnitude of about 3. The pressure in the underground area is a factor. More is worse, but just in injecting water with no pump pressure at all can cause earthquakes. And the mechanism is that the water that comes into the ground can travel over to a nearby earthquake and cause a slippage, which then produces the earthquake. The wells that we are talking about right now are operating in the low pressure condition, that is, they're not injecting water at high pressure, which is a good thing. It's also a fact that quakes can be many miles from the injection area. And so my request is for the city to contact the state and make sure that the state doesn't allow pressurized injection into the ground, even if they allow the regular injection. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polson. Connie Copps, Dave McGuigan, Bruce Shore.
Hi, I'm here tonight again to talk about Springtown. 3 things. First, Today, I saw on a meeting and found in my inbox, email inbox, that the LARPD is having meetings on January 31st, and what is it, the 30th? It's about Springtown. They claim that the first meeting on Monday, January 30th, will invite primarily for just the Springtown residents. I had a question on that. I know I spoke with you, Mayor, after the last meeting. I told you that there was some problems with the definition of Springtown, and a lot gets confused from that because 505 homeowners or houses in Springtown have the interest in the clubhouse and the swimming pools. That's their land that they've, paid dues on over the years. And I'm not sure if other parts of Springtown also had interest in it many years back, but that's not the case as I know it. And so, like, this first paragraph here says the city of Livermore has asked the LARPD to, join in the master plan, and it includes, and they say the city-owned portion of the closed golf course. And it says it excludes the Springtown Association, that's 505 homes that own that association, clubhouse and swimming pools and the parking lot. But it says nothing about their land. Now, at one point, Stu Gary said the Homeowners Association owns 6 acres of property. I always ask for that confirmation on what portion of that is owned by the city and how did they acquire it. Was it legal? Because I know when the golf course was purchased, your literature says 1971, newspapers and meetings, I actually allude to 1972, and then the lease that I was sent from Susan Neer says that 1977, so this is like 5 years later, the golf course wasn't able to turn a profit, so they were trying to buy this land that the Springtown Association had. And according to newspaper articles, their board members actually negotiated without the homeowner's consent on that, which is, I don't know if that's true or not, because a newspaper article could be propaganda. But it went on to read that, okay, the 505 people, okay, so you started leasing their property for $1 a month for like 40-some years, and then you pulled out of the lease. I've been asking questions to my HOA and to Darren Greenwood as well, and he said he was working on closing out with us, but my HOA is not communicating that to me. Do you know if the lease, if Livermore's been released from liability, if my board is negotiating without our consent, and if they are using an attorney to do so? Because I would want to be represented by an attorney if this affects my property ownership. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a question for the city attorney. With regards to legally acquiring the property, I trust that
when did that
you have
happen?
records that it was legally acquired by the
Correct.
city.
As we mentioned previously, the city forces, that being Darren Greenwood and his shop, did obtain a title report that showed the city was in possession and title ownership of those properties.
Not
excuse me.
Which properties?
This would probably be better to discuss offline rather than, or with.
No, I need
with-
to know this because the meetings are coming up and I need
Yes,
facts.
well, you can please contact the city attorney's office, but.
You should know this.
Wait. So, with regards to the lead agency for the study is in fact LARPD, correct?
That is correct.
So they're going to be having a couple of hearings, one for the Springtown residents and then one for the city at large. But I imagine people could really go to either one.
Springtown's confusing because there's more than one entity. The entities in Springtown actually conflict with each other.
Okay, so
because some people
Springtown-
own property there and some people don't, the public
That-
property.
It is the area that is referred to as Springtown. That's the area that's north of the freeway.
No. I'm talking about where are the boundaries? So what do you own? What does our association own?
And
And who
that,
is
I would-
negotiating the closure of that lease? Those are my questions. Please, you misinterpret my questions. I just want to know where the boundaries are,
This
and
is not
if
the
my board
conversation-
members are
Ms. Cox.
negotiating
Ms.
without
Cox.
our permission.
Ms. Copps, please, you have gone well beyond your 3 minutes. The council cannot engage in a discussion. The questions that you are asking would be best directed to the city attorney's office, and then you can get the answers from the city attorney's office. And remember, LARPD.
I'm not getting answers from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave McGuigan, Bruce Shore, K.E. Froschner.
Dave McGuigan, Ontario. Just a couple of quick questions. November 28th meeting in the closed session, you approved a action. I was wondering if that action has been commenced, and if so, against who and for what cause?
Go through your, we'll take all your comments at once, and then we can answer the questions.
Well, that's one I'd just like to get an answer on. Second one is, we all know it's illegal to have the police make false claims in their accusations. My question for this council is, do you believe it's morally wrong as well? So, Mayor Marchand, do you believe it's morally wrong for the police to make lies in their accusations?
Please, if you'll just go through your comments so then we can address all of them at once.
This is the way I want to do my comments. This is a question. I have a simple question for my council. Do you believe it's morally wrong for the police to lie when making their accusations?
They are sworn to uphold the law, so therefore, yes, it would be wrong.
Not legally wrong, morally wrong.
The question that you've asked, I would say yes, it would be morally wrong.
Okay. Councilman McCarling, do you believe it's morally wrong for the police to lie when making their accusations?
Yes.
Mr. Coomber?
We know, not knowing the background.
Just a simple question.
Simple question. It absolutely is morally wrong, if it's legally wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Good.
however, I could go on for hours too, so we'll get back to our business.
Well, I'm trying to. Mr. Warner, do you believe it's morally wrong?
I don't think this is the way Citizens Forum is supposed to work.
That wasn't the question. Is
It's
it
my answer.
wrong for me to ask a question about my counsel?
I'm done.
Let's try another one. Do you believe the accused ought to have a fair trial? Mayor Marchand, do you believe the accused should have a fair trial?
According to the Constitution, that's the law of the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. And we're all sworn up to uphold that.
Okay. So now, can you help me understand? How is it possible for someone to have a fair trial when they are required to prove that the officer is lying rather than defend their actions? Anybody? Not a good way. I haven't come up with an answer for that one either. Yet your chief actively promotes the lying, and we know this because he doesn't actively investigate. He defers his fiduciary responsibility to properly investigate. How do you know he's not properly investigating? He didn't even ask what the guy is doing. So what are you going to do when your police chief fails to do his proper fiduciary responsibility? I know, you can't answer.
Thank you, Mr. McGuigan. Bruce Shore, K.E. Froschner, Jomi Cofield. Sure.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, on March 14th last year, our Director of Community and Economic Development, Stephen Kiefer, submitted to the City Council a staff report in which he presented plans for demolishing the old mothballed main library building and in its place creating a new building, a civic center meeting hall. This meeting hall would, amongst other things, serve as a home for the many regular public meetings of the various city commissions, whereby volunteers and the general public do the work of our city. 9 of those commissions are listed on the city website. The Beautification Committee, the Commission for the Arts, Historic Preservation Commission, Housing Authority, Human Services Commission, Library Board of Trustees, Planning Commission, and Youth Advisory Commission. The meeting hall would also serve numerous administrative and training functions. These would include hiring examinations, technical certification training, department meetings, bargaining unit meetings, and neighborhood group meetings related to city projects. The new building would also include an emergency operations center, and it would include a larger area in which to hold the public meetings of the City Council with needed improved audio-visual support. The report states that the present council chambers, housing all of these functions, is occupied about 80% of weekdays. Our community has need for better facilities in which to do its work. I urge you to proceed with the steps needed to create this new Civic Center meeting hall. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shore. K.E. Froschner, Jomi Cofield, and Chuck Eiler.
First off, congratulations to the newly elected members on their campaigns and their elections, and to the incumbents for their patience, resilience, and leadership over the years. We came to Livermore in about 1961 when it was a little cow town. The changes, I think there were 2 restaurants, 2 wineries, and many trucks down First Street. The changes are truly amazing. It's a great town. It's a destination now. We were talking with one of the owners of a restaurant in town. He said at least half of his patrons are not residents, but from out of town. What I want to talk about is the plans for the old Lucky Shopping Center and what to do there. Reading the letters to the editor over the last several months, I think the consensus of opinion of most of the population around here is that we would like 2 things especially. One is parking, and on that subject I can relate our experiences. When we go downtown for dinner, and the question is, where should we go? The answer is usually wherever we can park. And all too often, we end up just going home because there isn't one. So I would say we need all the parking we can get. The existing area there is a parking lot, and it is used fairly regularly, full up. The second thing that people want is open space, green space, a park. And the question is, how do you do both? If you try to do both on the same piece of ground, each one of them is only going to be half as big as it ought to be. So I wrote a letter to the editor back several months, it was before the election, in which I proposed that there is a fairly simple solution to this where we can have parking over the same area that we have now, and we can have a park over that same area. The simple answer is you put one above the other. This has been done in one of the classic examples. Actually, my son-in-law, Tom Pico, told me about it. At the Kaiser Center in Oakland, there is a parking structure, which is basically a parking lot with a roof. And on top of the roof, there is dirt and trees, full-grown trees, mind you, and grass and ponds, and it's a great center for community events, live concerts, all sorts of things. So I just wanted to bring it up to your attention again. I know it's been a while since the letter was published. I think it would make Livermore a truly unique place to have cars on the streets, where they are now, but have a place equal in area, right in the middle of town, which is a park for the people, for the residents. It would make Livermore, I think, a real leader in terms of downtown development. So,
Thank you, Mr. Foshner.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Joe McCofield, Chuck Eiler, William Dunlop. Give those to the city clerk. Thank you. Great, thank you. More paper, great.
Sorry. It's sort of cool. I was 4 years old when it came out. Hi, I'm Joe Caulfield, a 37-year Livermore resident, speaking on behalf of Friends at Tesla Park, an alliance dedicated to permanently preserving Tesla Park land just east of Livermore. First, we want to thank the city and the city's help supporting Tesla preservation over the last 2 years of the EIR process, including a joint letter from the Altamont Landfill Open Space Committee, of which the city is a member at the final hearing on the EIR on October 21st, 2016. As you know, the final Carnegie EIR to open Tesla to OHV use was certified by the Off-Highway Motor Vehicle Recreation Commission in spite of overwhelming evidence submitted by numerous organizations, individuals, and public agencies, including the city. Because Tesla is too important to be destroyed, in November, 4 petitions challenging the CEQA approvals and other aspects of the project were filed in Sacramento, including the Friends of Tesla Park and the County of Alameda. Tonight, we're here to request your assistance again to support the litigation to prevent expansion of Carnegie SVRA into Tesla and to protect for future generations this incredibly unique natural landscape, which is part of our East County heritage. Specifically, we would like to request that you approve either the city filing an amicus brief in support of the petitions opposing the Carnegie SVRA project approvals, or to have the city join the county's petition. And in support of this, we would like you to direct staff to assess which is the most effective course of action in order for the city to support the litigation to ensure Tesla is protected. I handed out an Oakland Tribune article from 1956. I was 4, which shows that over 60 years ago, local leaders recognized Tesla's unique values and were exploring the potential of the Tesla Geological and Historical Park. Permanent Tesla preservation did not occur at that time, but now we have the chance to make it happen if we all work together. We hope the city will again vote to support Tesla preservation in this current litigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caulfield. Chuck Eiler, William Dunlop, Jeff Caskey. Mr. Eiler.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. I am Chuck Eiler. The Livermore Commission for the Arts set the goal to make our city a destination for the arts. To enhance that goal, I want to tell you about a proposed art career center for downtown Livermore. Currently in early planning, I shared it with the Livermore Cultural Arts Council last Wednesday. The Arts Career Center would be right next to the Bankhead, across from the ice cream store, behind the statue of a kid getting his face licked by a dog. The Art Career Center's mission will be to help youth develop the skills and the confidence to invent careers in the arts. What sort of arts? Culinary arts. Napa has wine. We had wine before they did. They have a Culinary Institute of America. We don't. We need to take them on. Performing arts, music theory, composition, musicology, and performing arts. Interlochen and Juilliard are the best role models here. And visual and narrative arts. CalArts in Valencia or Sheridan College in Canada are the ones to admire for this. Just picture dance, music composition, music performance, movie making, playwriting, play rehearsals, poster design, great cooking, and more happening in the same building, influencing each other. Working in the animation and film business for 40 years and as a resident of Livermore for 20 years, my commutes have been more than an hour and a half each way to supervise art teams for video games at Atari Games, Electronic Arts, and Disney, or to get to UC Santa Cruz to teach visual communication and interactive design. Those businesses are not near Livermore. I offer my expertise in the visual and narrative arts area, including computer graphics, animation, cinematography, and lighting, traditional visual art skills like drawing, sculpting, and color, and narrative skills of script writing, story writing, and lyric writing. The hope is that the Arts Career Center will draw local talent, be rocket fuel for their aspirations as it keens their skills, help existing businesses and spawn new businesses while lending exciting art activity to downtown. The desired result is for interesting, entertaining things to contribute to downtown constantly, and to encourage creation of jobs here in Livermore to rival the best in the Bay Area. The Arts Career Center is in its early planning stages. I'm looking for input and feedback to help coordinated efforts with local schools, local businesses, and other groups to build the business plan and assemble the rest of the team to run it. My contact information is available. Thank you.
Thank you. This sounds really like a quite an educational center. Have you spoke with the school district about potential funding for this?
Yes, we are talking to the school district, and I'm talking to the teachers that are teaching media and entertainment locally right now. And I'm going to be talking to everyone I can over the next few weeks.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
William Dunlop, Jeff Caskey, Gene King.
Bill Dunlop, 2675 St. Helena Court. And Mayor and City Council members, this is the beginning of what I hope is a very good year for each of you. And this evening I would like to just comment a little on the subject that I've been raising during the past year, and that is the development of the 8.1 acres downtown. The new year has not changed my basic thoughts on this property, but let me cover just two issues that I have been most interested in. I would like to see a fine hotel on the property. It would provide a welcome addition to the suite of hotels that are already here. My experience is, with visitors to the lab, that many stay in hotels in Pleasanton and Dublin, and would prefer to stay in Livermore if there were a higher grade hotel available. And frequently lab visitors stay outside of Livermore because there is no room in the inn, so to speak. I also think that some conference room space, either associated with the hotel or separate from the hotel, would be well used and provide a location for larger offsite meetings sponsored by the labs. I'm looking forward to your meetings with the citizens of Livermore to discuss and take input on the issues that surround the development of the property. And I'll look forward to that. And I thank you, for each of you, for your service to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlop. Jeff Caskey, Gene King, Jason Bezos.
Happy New Year, Mayor and Council. I'm Jeff Caskey. Start of a new year and start of a new process for defining the last big unfinished piece of Livermore's downtown. We're not starting from zero, of course. We did have one public workshop where some great ideas were generated by the public, and I anticipate we'll be talking more about public workshops. So I hope you're making a list of topics that will have to be addressed at these workshops as things that may be desired by the citizens of Livermore and their guests. One topic I'm clearly in agreement with Mr. Froschner, as we all heard a lot about, was the need for interesting parking and transportation solutions. I hope we get to discuss parking that's off-site, on-site, below grade, and alternatives like parking shuttles and bicycles as ways of distributing the parking and not ending up with a huge parking tower as the town's centerpiece. We should evaluate strategies like paid parking, carpool incentives, better parking guidance such as signage and parking apps. Is there anything we should be doing about electric vehicles or self-guided vehicles to look a little bit ahead? Bicycles could relieve some of the parking pressure while getting visitors closer to their destinations, but we can't expect that everyone lashes a bicycle to their car on the way into town. Other cities are already implementing bicycle rental and sharing programs. Imagine you drove out on First Street to a parking lot out to the east of the center of town, waved your cell phone next to a pole, and grabbed the bicycle for a comfortable 1 mile pedal into town. Or you stepped out of the Zephyr, located a bike with an app on your phone, grabbed it to attend a show downtown. We want to be careful not to get all techie just for the sake of doing it, but we do want to keep our eyes open to the opportunities as well. I do still think there may be a place for residential units in our downtown space. I hope the public workshops will be looking at creative living options that encourage local workers. course, that must fit with the use of the space as open space also for an important part of our community downtown open space. Another item that I heard from the people that I listened to, and I'm sure that you heard as well, and it's also a passion of mine, is to making sure that we do more than just make space for culture and heritage, but we incorporate it in a way that is engaging in our city. Residents of Livermore talked a lot about featuring their own heritage both for themselves and for their visitors. So in summary, I'm really here just to cheer you on, urge you to get the process moving forward again. We lost a little bit of time, but let's get the people of Livermore engaged, move the downtown planning forward. I'd like to see the council direct staff to schedule some workshops, perhaps with different focuses for each workshop, and get to filling that void in the middle of our downtown. I like Mr. Eiler's ideas about an educational center as well. Other communities have supported and then profited from high standards schools and cultural education, and I think that would be a cool thing for us to do as well. But thank you very much for your time, and let's get going.
Thank you, Mr. Keski. Gene King, Jason Bezos, John Stein.
Good evening, Mayor, and Council, and staff. I'm going to be repeating some of the things the other people have said. I ask the Council to start the new year with new plans for the downtown. Do not renew the exclusive negotiating agreement with Lennar. Instead, work with the citizens for a better plan. Schedule multiple public workshops for developing this plan for the downtown, including the Lucky Side and other downtown areas. In the past year, citizens have voiced many ideas about the downtown: traffic, parking, public town common, hotel, galleries, and museums. Please review these comments that you've already heard and use future public workshops to explore and expand on the visions of the citizens. The public over the last year expressed their strong support for an open space town common, accessible for many activities on the Lucky Site. This will not be simple, but it is important to Livermore. We have a unique opportunity to have something truly special for our city. The traffic and parking studies, which the city has been conducting, will be important. The public needs to be informed about the problems and possibilities for parking. Some of the suggestions were paid parking, below-grade parking, and distributing the parking to different locations. In 2002 and 2004, there were many public workshops for the downtown specific plan. Previous to the revitalization, the big traffic problem of downtown was the big trucks on First Street, which was State Highway 84. During one of those workshops, the consultant, Michael Friedman, stated that when the trucks are gone and you start hearing complaints about local traffic and parking, then you will know that you have been successful in bringing people to the downtown and its revitalization. I think that by that measure, we have been successful, but we need to take the next steps. We need to continue the development of the arts and entertainment district, retail, housing and open space, pedestrian-friendly areas, but with the parking concerns that accompany that activity. I look forward to a truly collaborative process with much public input in planning our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. King. Jason Bezos, John Stein.
Hi, good evening and Happy New Year. Congratulations, Mayor Marchand, on your re-election, and congratulations, Councilman Carling and also Councilmember Coomer for your election. I'm here this evening to talk about, again, related to the downtown plan. And I'm asking that the city immediately halt the Livermore Railroad Depot relocation project. Since the city's founding in 1869, there has always been a depot on that site. The city community literally was formed around it. The existing building has been there for about 125 years, since 1892. And so the city right now is proposing to use about $2.5 million of federal transportation funds to uproot the depot from its 124-year-old site and move it a half-mile away to serve as a bus station. The city should study integration of the depot into the downtown superblock project. They are together. There's been this effort to say they're not related, but it's been there 125 years, and so they ought to study first as Plan A before Plan B, which we can move it. And so that's my number one point here, is that the downtown specific plan I can't find where anyone at the city has followed it. It says in there are about 15 resources in the downtown plan that are national historic resources. We know a lot of the other ones, the Bank of Italy Independent Building and others, but the depot is one of them. The plan says the structures may be relocated only under very special circumstances where necessary to allow or achieve a public benefit of community-wide or regional significance. Now, I cannot find anywhere in the city records where this finding was made. My letter explains some of my concerns with that. Part of the problem, too, is they claim it was made back in October 2006, but a lot has changed since that time. At the time, one of the reasons for removing the depot was that it was privately owned at the time, but now it's been publicly owned since 2008. So that reason seems to have fallen away. And so my letter explains a little bit how I can't find that and some of the reasons. And also there seems to be confusion within the city of Livermore about its status as City Historic Preservation Landmark Site. There's a plaque on it that says that it is a landmark, but yet at the September 26th council meeting last year, there was a little bit of discussion between the council and the planning director, and they decided, no, it wasn't a landmark. Well, it says it's a landmark on it. And so let's figure that out because there's significance under CEQA and environmental reporting laws, and I'm concerned that those have not been followed. And also, this began as a $2.5 million project for a plaza or park in downtown Livermore. That was the plan originally from 2010 to about 2013. Then, of course, we know the redevelopment agency got taken away and the city needed to find some place to move the money. But this MTC and the Federal Highway Administration say it can go back to it. These are flexible funds. It can go back to being a downtown park. But we need to keep the depot on the table, considering it as Plan A, according to the downtown specific plan. And I'd like for someone to figure out, so I'd like in the matters initiated to look into these concerns about where were these findings made. The Planning Commission and also the Historic Preservation Commission last year, I don't think they made the findings there, as I also outlined in the letter. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bezos. And finally, John Stein, our last speaker.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. The previous speaker essentially gave my speech, so I have time to say things about a whole bunch of other things. I urge you not to relocate the depot, the Southern Pacific Depot, to the old Corporation Yard, which is now the Transit Center. It will essentially be out of public view, and the interior will have to be modernized to handle ticketing and rest areas. While the outside will look historical, nobody will see it, and the inside will lack most of the historical features that still remain, although it's been a restaurant and a number of other things. So I would urge that you at least delay relocating the depot until such time as the plans for the Lucky site are completed. In regard to parking, there are plans to essentially double the size of the existing parking structure to the south. And I urge that be a high priority. That will free up a lot of the parking constraints. The other issue is there's a desire for a number of things, an art center, meeting halls, a hotel, a conference center. It might be worthwhile talking to the people in Monterey where the Steinbeck Theater has been integrated with the Hilton Hotel. And interestingly, that was designed by a former Livermore employee, planner. And it might be worthwhile to get somebody from up there to find out what worked and what didn't. All of the issues need to be looked at carefully and priorities assigned. And what are our goals? Do we want this to be a tourist destination, a resource for the community, something parking in a big commercial center, residential? We need to prioritize those. I think it was Einstein who said if he was given a life or death question or situation, problem to solve, and he had an hour to do it, the first 55 minutes he would figure out what were the right questions to ask. And I think that's important. We need to decide what are our goals before we decide what we want to do. And finally, we need to come up with some idea of what the cost of the various proposals are and how they will be funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Hang on just a second. Okay. Okay, thank you. That concludes the Citizens Forum. Moving on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar are for items that are typically of a routine nature. They're typically passed on a single vote, single motion. I do have a speaker card for, it says 4 point, is it for, Ms. Cobb, is it for the entire consent calendar or just one item?
One item.
Which one?
Let's see. The approval of the minutes. I don't know if they're still the same ones I read online, but for the December 12th meeting, I was asking questions. I did speak a couple times, and on the Citizens Forum, it listed that Connie Copps spoke about a variety of things. I thought that was really general, and I thought that was sloppy work. There's no reason why there couldn't have been at least a subject matter listed. I am asking questions and bringing up comments to help make our city better. And I'll tell you one thing, I'd rather be booed, and I know you're really against booing, but I would rather be booed by this whole room than disrespected and ignored. I'm asking good questions, I'm giving good comments. I think that maybe we could initiate some training on listening and writing anecdotal records, for listing, when people speak. I thought that was way too general. Let's polish that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cobbs. Any comments or anything you wish to discuss on the consent calendar? One question I have on the tow franchise fee. Now that's to recoup the cost the city incurs through the cost of the towing back to the city. Have we ever looked at doing a bid process on that? For example, these are obviously there are charges that are made to the people who are unlucky enough to have their cars towed. Have we ever looked at setting up a bid process on the cost to the end consumer?
So the actual cost to the end consumer is not the subject of your item tonight, but that is a subsequent step in the process. This actually talks about the fees charged to those who actually get a franchise. The next step in the process will be go out to a request for proposal, and the city has several goals in that process. The first is to ultimately end up with multiple qualified franchisees, and that's of course because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we do need to have access to have vehicles towed, both when they're illegally parked, improperly located, or when there has been a situation where the driver can no longer continue to drive the vehicle. So we'd like to have multiple folks. They also have to have a time frame which they respond to. But in direct answer to your question, we do have the ability through that request for proposal process, which is the next step in the process, and ultimately the council approves those franchisees at the end of that process, to state maximum or agreed upon rates that would be charged to the actual owners of vehicles. And if that's something that the council would like us to include in that process, we can certainly do that as a part of this next step.
Okay, we can probably consider that at that time. All right, great, thank you. Is there a motion for the consent calendar?
Yes, moved.
Moved by Councilmember Coomber, seconded by Councilmember Carling. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. No public hearings. Okay, matters for consideration. This is the appointment to the Oversight Board for the Successor Agency. This has been going on for quite a while. And so the recommendation is for me to appoint someone to the Oversight Board. Any further, any additional comments you wish to add on that?
No, that is correct. You have a firm grasp of the situation. Mayor Marchand, we've been dissolving the RDA for some time now. The state took the action in 2011.
I think since I got here.
We formally dissolved them in February 2012. We are at the closing steps of that right now. We will have an oversight board meeting in January of this year, and most likely only have one additional one in January of next year if things go well. At that point, it'll transition to a countywide oversight board who will pick up the reins fully in January 2019.
Okay. Well, I probably have more back history on this than anybody else. So rather than have anybody else forced to come up to speed on this, I'll appoint myself to this, just to sort of finish this out. But again, I think I've got more background than most, so that nobody else has to come up to speed.
Very good. Thank you, and you're too kind to your fellow council members.
Well, I mean,
I was about to say not it. You know, I mean, we were, you know, I was going to get that out first and let the others
Well,
go.
I mean, there's that stack of binders. You
Not
know.
it.
Okay. All right. So I'll appoint myself. Have they actually transcribed it out of the cuneiform and out of the clay tablets into print? Okay. Okay. So with that, we have committee reports and matters initiated. Councilmember Warner.
Okay, I've got a few things here. I went to the, you appointed me to the LCAC delegate, so I went there last time, and I appreciate going to that meeting. And that meeting was a fair amount of routine business, but a couple of items did come up. One was, I'll mention the minutes here, one was Greg Bueno and Chuck Eiler came and talked about the same thing that we heard Mr. Eiler talk about earlier. And so it sounds like an interesting opportunity to provide all of those kinds of facilities. The impression I got, and I voiced at the time, that it made sense that the you would need a lead agency, and that would most likely be the school district, because in order to do anything like that, you're going to need some kind of coalition. Excuse me, and so you need somebody to kind of be out in front. So I think that makes sense to me. And the second item I'll mention is that the arts groups, especially the Shakespeare and opera, talked about their space needs, but other groups need space as well. And the current solution the city's had for many years is to move them from one decrepit building to another. And so I pointed out that, you know, just being the itinerant, you know, gypsy isn't really the way to do it. And maybe the city has gotten to the point where that's something we ought to address more permanently. So that was just a thought there. That so and of course I think some group like LCAC thought that was a good idea. So we'll have to see how it goes from there. I think.
And one of the things that happens is when you talk to the cities, they say, "Well, just use abandoned warehouses." We don't have a lot of those. You know, this is we're hot property here. So.
No, but I think it's it may be time for some creative thinking here. So that was just a thought. Now the let's see so that was that. So the other thing is, if you bear with me for a little bit, especially the new members here, is that had initiated several things in the last council, and I wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of weigh in on it, and make you aware of what those things are. And I'd like to point out that, and through matters initiated, what we're doing is asking staff to bring back a report for a future meeting where we can make a real decision. So the question that these matters initiated that I'm talking about are actually getting started on the decision process, and we can decide whether to do them or not. But that's not asking you to decide now. It's asking you that they're worthy of investigating. That's kind of the level of what I'm talking about. So with that, there were several items that I thought that we should do to enhance the downtown while we get started on the larger downtown specific plan. So the first one was we have the Livermorium Plaza, which I think the mayor has been the initiator of that idea to have some piece of art that would commemorate Livermorium. And what we have there is the issue as to who's accountable for the cleanup of the site. And then we also have, well, what do we want to do with the site? So I'm suggesting that we bifurcate those two questions and that we get prepared to execute on the plan for the plaza once the liability issue is determined. So the matters initiated is for staff to work on with the various other advisory commissions and the public so we're done with the plan that we can execute on. So that was the first one. So I guess that all makes sense again still for the rest of you? Okay. The second one was it had been proposed that that we have some kind of shade in front of the Bankhead Theater for concerts. Now the original idea was it would be for the band, but that evolved into, well, let's think about what the shade options are for the audience as well. So that's the second matters initiated, is just to investigate with the appropriate advisory commissions again as to what might make sense there. So we had before, and the previous council said, yeah, do that. I just want to see if you guys are also.
But that doesn't need to be a permanent structure or steel, or it could be a variety of different options.
No. Something that's cost effective and artistic and appealing. And there are models for that kind of thing where people have had basically the flying triangles of canvas and things, and that's around. So it's cost effective, but it would make that a much more pleasant place to be, especially in the summertime, because it can be brutal. So okay, so then the third thing is that LDI has wanted to get lights on some of the streets between First Street and Second Street, so that the Second Street area and the parking that's even on Third Street is more comfortable for people, and it begins to draw it in. So we're talking about one or two streets, and staff has already started looking at that, but I just wanted to say that's another thing that we would like to see done. Now, for the lights for the trees, I mean, that was, again, a partnership between various organizations, but a lot of people in the community actually donated for that. So that would be another kind of funding source for this. And I donated for the lights and the trees, and I certainly would donate to this one too, because I think it would enhance the downtown. So I think the staff is working on that. Okay. So then the fourth thing, which is much bigger deal than any of the others, is that it's going to take a while for us to figure out downtown, frankly. But we do know that there is a lot of need for parking. And I think Mr. Stein in one of the earlier meetings pointed out that we kind of have this problem that if you start building anything downtown, you're going to wipe out a lot of parking while it's in progress. So what we had proposed in a few meetings ago is that we fast track the plans for a garage next to the existing garage. And that we get that done, and then that frees up the space and allows us to then think about downtown. And that part of doing that, though, we need to figure out the traffic flow. Because frankly, the current entry into the garage is not optimal. I mean, it's kind of dangerous, in fact, I think, times. So it's confusing. So the idea is that there would be a traffic study in conjunction with this plan for the parking, and that the first thing to think about in the parking is not the cost and all of that, but just, is it design-wise feasible to put a garage there and have the appropriate traffic flow? And so that was, again, one of the things that we're working on, and that traffic study would inform what we're doing with downtown. So one aspect of this traffic study, I think, is very important, and we know in the past that the answer might be controversial because people have beliefs, but they may not have the facts. So I'm suggesting that we figure out a way to come to get behind the consultant we'll probably hire to do the traffic study, and that we vet that consultant before the answer comes in, and that the various people who might want to weigh in on the topic weigh in first on the qualifications of the consultant, and then we get the answer. I really am not interested in seeing we get an answer and then people complaining, frankly. So that was the other piece. So I think I saw some heads nodding on that one. Then the fifth one, and I'll stop here because I think give you guys other times to weigh in on what we heard in matters in Citizens Forum tonight. But the other thing is that we're somewhat vulnerable with the current downtown specific plan. And so the thought that came up at the end of last year was we can relatively simply, before we do a wholesale redo of the downtown plan, which is kind of what we need to do here when we think about it, is that we can just send to the Planning Commission to evaluate whether we could put a 3-story limit on the residential component downtown. Now, what that does is it puts a little pause in things, and it puts us, the city, more in control of what happens. We can always give an exemption to it, but the idea, once it's in place, then we can't be held to the current limits. So that was the other thing, is to, and again, this isn't to make a decision tonight, it's just simply to explore and to bring back a decision package on whether that makes sense. But from all the various ideas that were bandied about at the end of last year, that kind of came up as a practical way to put some adjustment into the plan and make sure we're not forced to abide by the current one. And again, this is simply 3-story limit on the residential component. So again, that may be a little bit, you might not have had enough time to think about that, but I want to just say that I want to ask for, again, that heads nodding on whether we can go forward on evaluating that. Okay, so I'll thank you for your patience. I did want to get all those things out there because I think they're important to a sense of let's get our arms around this downtown, but let's not stop on progress on things that we can, meaningful things we can do that aren't completely dependent on figuring out the larger whole. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Warner. Councilmember Coomer. So this matter's initiated, and things that you want to be brought before the council for future consideration, or meetings that you've attended since last month.
Well, I kind of want to go on in the matters initiated part, and I really want to echo much of what you said, Councilmember Warner. I have a belief that all the things that have to happen before we think about building anything down there should be studied and happening first. Traffic. Where's traffic going to go given a potential of this many units or whatever, this much activity downtown, whatever increase it is? Parking is, I think, the first thing to tackle. I think the parking and the traffic are the first things I want to go for. I want to make sure we have somewhere in the budget I want to support. If we're looking for an increase in people coming downtown and building to that effect, we need to find out if we have police and fire services to match what we're doing, along with what we're building around town. There's a lot of building going on around town, and as we increase our population, I think it's only fair that we increase our public safety. But I really want to start, before we start thinking Disneyland, we need to think about the road to Disneyland. All that has to be done, paved, built. We need to have a place to park. We need to have a place to go. So I want to mostly echo those two items, Bob, that you brought up. I'm all in favor of that. At this point, I'm still learning, and I'm going to initiate more matters as we go along. But tonight, that'll suffice.
Mayor Marchand, if I may?
Yes.
Just to put a bow on what we've done so far. Matters initiated, again, are not necessarily state positions, but as for items you'd like to return to you, I gave Councilmember Warner, the other ER, a great deal of latitude to articulate what are the current matters initiated pending before staff to return to you with. So it would be helpful to focus on those type of items. You will have opportunity to speak and give direction to staff as far as your goals. You have a goal-setting conference coming up. You have a workshop. You'll be able to speak with staff, evaluate what would you like to see as far as priority. That will speak into your budget. But I'd request that, encourage you to save those comments for that particular forum, and matters initiated focus on actual items you'd like to staff's return to, and if it's the consensus of the council, we'll bring those back.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councilmember Carling.
So based on that, I hope what I'm going to ask fits what your point, Jason, and that is
we'll help you through it.
It was brought up earlier today by one of the speakers about scheduling some workshops, and I was wondering, could we get some workshops scheduled, and is that something I could ask the staff to do?
We're probably going to be getting into that during the goals and priorities.
You,
I
you
imagine.
actually have like a four-part answer to that. So
How many? Four?
Yeah. So Councilmember Warner pointed out that the council's previous direction to us was to do a number of background studies in anticipation of beginning workshops on this. We do anticipate hearing, specific direction from you at your goal-setting workshop shortly, where you'll both define some of these things for us and also give us a little bit of a priority for that piece there. But the good news is, related to the downtown specific plan, there's a lot of staff work going on that are preparing us to go out and essentially, when the council sort of gives us some help with the prioritization and sort of what exactly that looks like, our current schedule does anticipate us going out and meeting with a number of different stakeholders related to some of the issues that have already been discussed this evening. Further direction on that from the full council in a workshop setting is normally where we would do those sorts of, where you would adjust and or enhance some of those things, especially around what your goals out of the workshops are and sort of the land use questions around that. So the good news is that's coming up on top of you pretty quickly. And we're actually, the other good news is we're doing a lot of our background work so that we'll actually have something to share. Because going out to a workshop obviously requires us to do a lot of stuff beforehand before we're out and about. So we might, Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about when we'll be back updating the council on some of the items that have been brought up?
Sure. We're actually in process already and looking at that parking option to the west of the existing parking structure, and we're also looking at traffic in that vicinity. We're utilizing our existing parking and traffic consultants to do some of that analysis, and we would expect to be able to have some preliminary reports back on that in the February timeframe. So within about a month to a month and a half from now, we'll have some analysis back.
Can I say something?
Yeah, well, I mean, I heard what you said, and I think it's fine. I just, as we all know, the downtown development caused a lot of discussion, and I think the citizens, the residents, are eager to know what some of the next steps are, and I don't think that they always know when things are going to be brought back to the council about parking and traffic and so on and so forth. And if we could set some dates, even if they're out in March or April or something like that, I think it would give them a sense that we're moving in the right direction and we understand what we've heard, what they have to say. We've got some things to do in the meantime. Sure, I think everybody knows that. But if we could get some dates on the calendar, I think that would help the residents a lot in terms of recognizing that we've listened to what they've had to say and we're moving forward and they're going to be included.
Just add on to that just a little bit. I agree. People would like to know what the plan is. I actually think that given how it went in the last year or so, that we need to think about it pretty carefully. And one thing you could say is, well, let's schedule some workshops. But on what? And the very fundamental question here is, do we have a workshop where we talk about all the topics? Or do we have a series of workshops where we parse things into meaningful chunks? I mean, that's a very fundamental question. And we haven't even decided that. And so what we need to do is actually have that conversation. And I think that's going to happen in possibly in the goal setting. But that's a first step. Now, I agree that we could say we're targeting some time frame where we would figure out what, we could have a workshop. We don't know what the topic is exactly, but we could begin to scope out possibly some kind of schedule. So that might be the matters initiated, is to come back with a tentative schedule where maybe the topic of the workshop isn't clear.
Well, we could start with parking and traffic, I suppose, right? I mean, that's the one that you've already kicked off, right?
Right. We could.
And so the staff is already well into that.
Right. We could do that one.
Jason's
the next
sort of
one
twitching
was
over here.
Sorry, I didn't want him to twitch.
We're getting close to discussing.
Yeah. So your order of events here would be what you've asked us to do, as I understand the pleasure of the council, is to bring back some tentative work on scheduling next steps in the downtown, including the workshops there. Your largest discussion is already set, so that's your March discussion and your white paper actually will have as a part of it next steps, tentative timelines, and some tentative discussion points for you to correct us on or agree with. Because again, getting the pleasure of the entire body in open session is sort of what we will need to do at that particular time. If there is something that's appropriate to bring back to you as an update in between, for us, remember, we are always 4 weeks ahead of you on product. So in other words, the first moment we could bring something to you essentially is the second meeting in February at this point because of when we publish items and we actually have to do the work necessary before that. So I think what we will concentrate on as a staff with the concurrence of the council is to develop what those next steps are, what some of those topics could be, and maybe an approach or two to get some feedback from you all on, yes, this way, not that way, so that we make sure that we've got good concurrence from you as we do set up, and we do actually expect it to be out into the community in springtime, which is like really soon on the mechanics of actually getting a workshop done and getting stuff out there in advance so that people know it's coming, because nobody wants to hear 3 days before they're having a workshop.
Right.
So we'll bring you back an interim, and then we will have something for your workshop in March on that as well. And it is our goal setting. Excuse me. All right, and I thank goodness Jason's here, is with, we are in February for our goal setting. So from that perspective, we are in the middle of the month, so that'll actually be back before you. We won't have an interim between those two, but we will have that, and you'll be able to give us direction and say, yep, this sort of outline you've given us sounds good, or adjust it this way or that way. And goal setting is a very good format to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And as we are talking about doing workshops and gaining community input, this was a very interesting series of events as we were working through the downtown specific plan. As some of the folks tonight mentioned, the many workshops that we had rolling into the downtown specific plan back in 2004, and the long process that we went through on that. And having been in a lot of that process, one thing that's become very clear to me is that we need to broaden the outreach to get a real good sense of the entire community. Because in the downtown specific plan, there was, we had a number of hearings, and I had 80 people in this building support 400 housing units on that 8 acres when we first booted up the downtown specific plan. And within the last year, many of those 80 people that spoke to us several years ago in support of the 400 housing units are now saying there should be no housing units. So these are the same people that came to the same workshop. So what we need to do, and when the council considered this earlier last year, we had cut that housing unit by 40%. And so there was, based on the previous workshops that we had, there was seeming consensus to put housing on that site. What we have heard now is that the community doesn't want that. So what we need is we need to broaden that outreach. So rather than just have a series of single or a couple of different workshops, we need to get a broader sense of what the community wants as a whole. Because we've heard from a number of people, but I don't think it's necessarily the broad community. I think we need to make sure that we get a good sense of what the community wants. So before we just decide on having a couple more workshops, I think we need to get broader community engagement so that we get a really good sense of what the community wants. So that's not just a caveat on that rather than just have a couple of workshops, let's make sure we get a good sense of what the community wants.
And that'll definitely be a subject to cover at your goal setting coming up in February.
Right. I'm just kind of teeing that up. Let me do matters initiated first. I'm kind of surprised that nobody jumped on this one. Oh, okay, that's right. Okay. Hey, you know what? I'm sorry. You know what? I go in different directions. Vice Mayor.
That's perfectly fine.
Vice Mayor.
Okay, well, first I'd like to say that I agree with Bob. And that is the first time I've used that, but I will use that many times. And I've been waiting for that one. So, yes, I agree with Bob. Really, I hope everyone had
change your name to Bob.
I could be Bob Spadowski for these meetings, but that would just confuse things. No, anyway, I hope everyone had a excellent holiday, Christmas, New Year break. Part of that was I didn't really have any meetings to attend. It was quite strange. I kept wondering what was wrong. But now, with the storms, the floodgates have opened. Basically, and I have many things packed for this week, starting this afternoon with the Wheels Board of Directors meeting. And the one item to report out from that meeting is the implementation of a service called Go Dublin, which is, it was in the East Bay Times today, and I believe it was also in Sunday's paper. I'm seeing 2 articles about it now. So there was a service, 2 routes in Dublin that had extremely low ridership. To the point where it was basically a $15 per rider subsidy, which is really not acceptable for the transit agency. So we partnered with Uber and Lyft, and it's a demonstration project largely funded by Alameda County Transportation Commission through a grant. And what it will do is riders within those zones where the former routes were can apply to receive up to a $5 discount on their ride from Uber or Lyft, and that's funded through the grant program. So if they ride share, they can get this discount, and it's I believe it's the first in California where a private private, what do they call it, transportation, TNCs, transportation network carrier, I think is the acronym, is partnering with a public transit system to find an alternate for areas that typically don't do well under the fixed route model. So that was pretty exciting, and we'll see how that goes. Other than that, I don't have any other meetings to report out, but I do have only one matters initiated, and if I get support, I would like a report from staff in a timely manner. I don't know exactly what that means, but I would like to see what our options are for supporting the litigation on the Tesla Park action. Just what are our options and what are the ramifications? I've heard amicus briefs, I've heard joining petitions. I'm just wondering what the costs and the options would be at this point. And if there are any upcoming deadlines. I know when you have litigation, there's a certain deadline possibly to joining these actions. So that's why I'm saying in a timely manner, if we can get a report back for council consideration, I'd appreciate it.
It's the pleasure of the council. Excuse me. Seeing that it's the pleasure of the council, we will schedule a closed session for our next meeting, and I'll present the information at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it under the wire. That's what I was going to ask about it. Because if you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring that up.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, there you go.
good. Okay. Excellent. We had one comment tonight about the E&B resources, about the injection of of wastewater into the groundwater basin. And just to go on the record, I spent my career as a water quality chemist and dealing specifically with groundwater and surface water. And I was also the organic chemist that did the BTEX analysis, so benzene, xylene, toluene. And so those are the things that my specialty is. So let me assure everyone that I will do everything within my power to ensure that the safety of the drinking water is protected. So that's just to make that point that we will protect the groundwater, and we will protect the drinking water safety. Absolutely. As far as let's see, December 18th, Scott Haggerty was sworn in by Gavin Newsom, so I was there for that. December 19th, I don't know how many people saw that, David Benoit performed with the Mendenhall Choir, and it was absolutely wonderful. They did the music from the Charlie Brown Christmas, absolutely fantastic, but the Mendenhall Choir just shone. December 24th, I was honored to light the menorah in the downtown for Chabad of the Tri-Valley to start the Hanukkah celebration. January 6th, I was at the ACE board meeting in Stockton. I am newly appointed to that, taking the place of former Fremont Mayor Bill Harrison, so I'm going to be taking his place on the ACE board. Today, I was at the Alameda County Transportation Commission. The 580 Express Lane update, we are averaging 31,000 trips a day on the express lanes, and that has brought in $6.4 million in revenue since it opened in February of 2016, and that money stays in the corridor. So that's going to be for more transportation projects here. We also talked about the RM3 provisions that would be coming up. That's the regional measure bridge toll money. So that's how that would be allocated. AB 28 is proposed, and this is very important because this would reinstate the provisions that are going to sunset. Actually, that did sunset December 31st, 2016, and that delegates responsibility to Caltrans to complete the NEPA review of transportation projects. So we want to make sure that we come back and we get that back, because that can certainly help as we start working on bringing BART into Livermore along the freeway. And this is an urgency measure that can be moved ahead of any transportation funding agreement. With that, as I adjourn the meeting, I would like to adjourn the meeting in memory of a longtime colleague of mine, Margaret Tracy. We served on the Zone 7 Water Board for a number of years together, and she was an absolute champion for water policy for decades. I was Sarge a couple of months ago and was quite shocked when I found out in the Independent she had passed away. And so I would like to commemorate and honor her years of service to the community, to the region. That she was an absolute champion when it came to water protection, water quality, and conserving the aquifers. So with that, I would like to adjourn the meeting in memory and honor of Margaret Tracy. We are now going to adjourn into closed session. So I ask that we clear the auditorium so that we can convene in closed session.